Alright guys, welcome back to Formula 1 news. Mercedes yet again the talk of the town after bringing a surprising upgrade to the circuit of the Americas. 4 upgrades all across the park. The one that's been making the most inroads though is the front wing design, which some say is illegal, may well be banned from this race but used in the future, but others seem to disagree. Very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always, I'd greatly appreciate it. It really helps out the channel. Thank you very much indeed for doing that one. This is the front wing design. You can see these little clips kind of thing really between the top 2 elements of the flap. The idea is to make sure that the gap between those 2 sections remains the same the whole time. I think the idea is that these are, if you use these, you're allowed 8 of them. They're not meant to be used for like aerodynamic effect. They're meant to be used just to hold things in place. And of course, other teams are going to make the question mark as to whether that is fair or not. Couple of quick updates. Firstly, from Logan Sargeant, we've heard that Nico Hülkenberg is definitely the favourite to join Haas as their guy alongside Kevin Magnussen. That could be a pretty entertaining duo as well. But and there we thought, okay, Mick Schumacher, where's he going to go? Is it going to be Williams? Apparently they want Logan Sargeant because maybe Williams realised that if they get Mick Schumacher, he might well go to Audi in 2024 when they probably partner up with Sauber and Alfa Romeo disappear. So that's kind of the present rumour going on there. And if that is the case, then maybe Williams will want to give Logan Sargeant an extra season. He actually did a practice session yesterday in FP1. It did pretty well, drove it around, didn't crash it, and I think that actually gave him an extra point towards a super license for managing that. So that's pretty good stuff. I think he still needs to come P5 at in Abu Dhabi, the final race of the F2 season, to guarantee his super license will be good enough to make sure he can get through into the Williams seat for next season. But apparently they might announce him already. So that's good confidence in him, because if he DNFs in Abu Dhabi, there's a chance he doesn't even get the super license to compete. So we'll see on that one, but exciting driver, I think. So it would be good to have him on the grid. This to mention also because the FIA have done a review of the instance of the Japanese Grand Prix, the tractor on the track, the Gasly incident. They said Gasly was driving recklessly, which was fair, I think, but also the FIA, what they did was far more ludicrous in terms of the element of danger it brought on. And they've actually done a significant number of changes here. One of them is that they're not going to change the race directors anymore. This, I think, was a key thing, really. Every weekend, pretty much, there was either Nils Wittich or Eduardo Freitas, I think is the other guy's name, that will alternate in race directorship. And this is just a bad idea from start to finish, because every week you're going to get someone with a different perception on what they should really do. So apparently Nils Wittich, he's going to be the race director every single race from now until Abu Dhabi. They also made some additional changes, one of which I thought was kind of cool here was the dynamic VSC. So usually the VSC is the drivers get a delta on their dash, on their wheel, and it tells them effectively what speed to go. I think under VSC conditions it's like 40% lower than what you'd normally be doing. But the problem is really that if you're, let's say you're Gasly, you've just pitted and then you're driving around, you're way behind your delta because you've just come into the pits to change your front wing or remove that piece of debris off the front of this car. Therefore, there's nothing wrong, really. I mean, you don't want to be sprinting around really quick in the wet, but like by his delta, he's got to catch up to the delta. So he can go fast through there, wasn't aware the tractor was there. If he loses control, that could be GG. So the idea is now to have a dynamic VSC where in certain elements of the track, like between those sectors and where those incidents occur, then they force like the delta speed required to be lower. So this is a really cool idea, I think, and it also ensures that the drivers can know where the incidents are, because if Gasly was aware that there was a tractor on the track there, then obviously he wouldn't have gone so fast. And if his dynamic VSC said incident ahead, you've got to go at this speed instead of the higher one, then he would have gone slower and there would have been no risk of an incident, I suppose. Even though it would have been small risk, but still it's better than nothing, I guess. And they're also going to look into actually deploying all the cars and stuff like this as well. So honestly, fair play to the FIA. Within just a few days of Suzuka, they've come up with some pretty good remedies of why exactly they might be able to stop this in the future. And the dynamic VSC, I think, is a pretty good one. Let's talk Mercedes and their new front wing. So a few things they've changed. Front wing, floor fences, floor edge, and then rear wing end plate as well. Nothing for anybody else apart from a floor edge for Alpine and a floor body for Alfa Romeo. No one else has done anything. This is what this new wing looks like. So I think they've actually got 5 things on it. But as you guys can see, 5 of these little, I don't even know what to call these. There's little elements of the front wing to kind of clip together the top element and the middle element here. No one else has really tried this so far. Now, the issue with this could be is that it creates more kind of outwash from the front wing, because the whole point of the new regulations is to ensure that the airflow off the car is as least intrusive as it possibly can be to the cars behind in terms of what airflow they get. So anything that might kind of affect this in some way outside of what the regulations intended, like therefore you might get some some questions. And I thought there was going to be questions about Aston Martin's rear wing they put on for Budapest, like at this kind of weird circular design, which made it look like last year's rear wing, which I thought might be banned because it's against the spirit of the regulations. Turns out it's not, and other teams probably might do the same, certainly next year. So Mercedes are trying this, and look, there's also some changes to their floor and stuff, and seemingly Hamilton and Russell in a second are going to say, feels a lot better, the car, like this time, than it has done in previous weeks. They may be closer to the front runners than they have been so far this season, right? Who knows? Maybe a circuit that suits them, but there are a couple of straights, which definitely is going to slow them down quite a fair bit. But yeah, rumours circulating the paddock as to whether these eyebrow winglets, as Kravitz called them, are not compliant with the regulations. Bit strange, because some people say that they are, some people say that they're not, but apparently the FIA approved this, because when you make a new element, you tell the FIA, hey, this is what we're going to build, is it okay? And they say either yes or no, and then you build it, and then it's fine or it's not fine. But apparently Mercedes built this one, and these are some details of kind of the other upgrades on the car, but apparently they built this one, Mercedes, like the FIA said it was fine in the kind of the CFD, in the simulator, in what they showed them online on the graphics, and they were like, yeah, that's fine. And then they built it, and they were like, actually, we're not so sure about this. So that's what some people say, and then other people say that actually that's not the case at all. But yeah, Toby Groiner is reporting here that Mercedes are going to have to modify this because the FIA have said that it's not legit or it doesn't conform to the regulations in the way they intended them. So a little bit strange, to be honest, but others are not reporting that or not suggesting that. So apparently these stabilizers are too big. That's the key concern. But Mercedes were surprised about this because in CAD, what they sent over to the FIA before, this got approved by the FIA, right? They said it was fine. And now they're saying when they actually built the real thing that it's all of a sudden not fine. So it's like, how does that work, right? Like if the CAD thing was exactly what they built in real life, then surely the FIA, like, I guess they got it wrong the first time. The FIA is still within their rights to say, hey, we don't want you to use that, even if they approved it in the CAD constructions. But yeah, still, obviously Mercedes aren't going to be so happy about this. Will reduce the aerodynamic effect that they wanted, and we'll have to change it for the Mexico Grand Prix, which will take more time and money. So they're not particularly happy about it. But apparently the entire upgrade package is a good one. Supposedly a big gain in performance, 1.5 tenths of a second, they reckon. Modifications to both wings, floor, like the car's also much lighter, which 1.5 tenths, that might be over an average length track of a 1 minute 20 lap time. Cota's more like a 1 minute 30, 1 minute 35 lap time. So it could be a quite significant difference. But what do you guys think about this front wing, right? Because yeah, Mercedes are obviously expected to, I suppose, modify it and try and use it in Mexico. But the other part of this is that apparently, like, they only built one of these wings for here in Cota. So they wouldn't have been able to run it anyway unless they ran it on both cars. So maybe they weren't sure if it was going to be allowed or something. It's kind of tough to tell. Or maybe they're just using it to try and get data for next year. Because Mercedes definitely are leading the data gathering world championship this season. And Hamilton probably is leading it in the drivers as well because of all the guinea pigging he was doing at the start of the season. But yeah, apparently they only had one front wing anyway. So they could have fit it to one of the cars. But if they get damaged, they'd have to change the spec. And, it's obviously not ideal for them. And apparently in Mexico, they're going to bring a bunch more of these front wings. So I guess they're going to change up whatever the FIA want them to. So bit of a messy situation, to be honest, as usual here in Formula 1. And yeah, apparently they only brought one version of the new front wing. Maybe one per car, but just the fact that they only brought one means that, okay, if you damage it or something goes wrong, then it could go badly wrong. And in terms of not being able to replicate the spec from quali to race, let's just say, for example, and that can bring its own host of issues. Maybe they weren't really intending to use it this weekend fully, or they were just there to see if the FIA would allow it. Really tough to say. But yeah, speaking of the results in free practice yesterday, this was FP2 actually, because this is when the tyres are being tested, 90-minute window. So, I mean, honestly, you've got to disregard a lot of what you guys see right here. It was Leclerc on the mediums, then Bottas, Riccardo, P1, P2, P3. But yeah, these were kind of the only drivers to really do many laps on the normal tyres. Most teams were testing out the new tyres for next season. This was FP1 a little bit earlier, a little bit more to read into here potentially. Sainz, Verstappen, Hamilton, even Stroll was up here though with Aston Martin and Alpine all looking good. The gaps between all the teams here were very nice indeed. And in fairness, we kind of saw this last time out in Suzuka in even Q1 and Q2 when the gaps between the teams were good, and then Q3 it was just Ferrari and Red Bull that just extended a second on everyone pretty much. So I wonder if that'll happen here again, and may well be the case as the weekend progresses. But obviously they've got some upgrades. What do Mercedes think about them? The drivers are seemingly pretty happy about it, to be honest. Hamilton went on to say the following: everything went to plan. I kept the car in one piece today. He had a really bad oversteer moment as well at the second final corner. Almost lost the car. I think that was with the test tyres actually, so maybe not providing him the grip that he wanted. But yeah, he managed to keep the car in one piece just about. Feeling feeling quite good, he says, in practice 1, hoping they can make some changes, see where they are. Russell said he thought they felt okay. There were a few teams who were looking fast that were unexpectedly up there, like Aston Martin and such. They've been making good progress the second half of the season for sure. They don't know what the pecking order is, etc, etc. And of course, Red Bull and Ferrari are going to turn up the pace when it matters today. So, I mean, yeah, we'll see how close this brings Mercedes to the front. Hamilton was also not happy about the bumps on the track. This is generally a thing that COTA has against it. Is I think they've tried to reprofile and resurface it, but the track is generally just pretty bumpy. And this year's Mercedes, but really all the cars, do struggle over the bumps, because to have a ground effect car, the suspension has to be really stiff to ensure that the vortices under the car like remain intact the whole time. The ground effect isn't massive on this year's car compared to how it was back in like the late 70s, 80s, or whenever they were trying to use it for the first time. And but the issue is that you have to really have a stiff suspension, so going over bumps is not a good time, especially for the Mercedes. And even Hamilton was saying recently he went back after the Canadian Grand Prix and drove the 2021 car around COTA, and he was like, yeah, it was so good. Like, I remember getting out of the car just beaming from ear to ear because it was so smooth, good downforce, good power. Like, obviously this year lost a bit of power with the biofuels. And then he said luckily he doesn't have any fillings, because if he had any fillings they would all come out because the car's so bumpy. I'm really praying for not a bumpy car next year, but you know, we'll see if he actually gets his wish answered there, because as I say, it's kind of just a consequence of the new regulations that the suspension has to be stiffer, and it's not going to be fun over bumpy tracks, as Hamilton's experienced many times already this year, but seemingly other cars and other teams have it more under control than Mercedes do. But very much enjoyed your thoughts on all this in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.